caused by org.flywaydb.core.api.flyway exception. Validate failed. Migration checksum mismatch for migration 2. This follows the same teaching style as your earlier Spring Boot topic. Introduction. When using Flyway in a Spring Boot application, database migrations are tracked carefully to ensure that schema changes remain consistent across all environments. Sometimes during application startup, you may see an error like this, caused by org.flywaydb core.api flyway exception. Validate failed. Migration checksum mismatch for migration 2. This can be confusing, especially for beginners. At first, it may look like Flyway is broken. The database is corrupted. Spring Boot failed. Randomly, migration files are not being read correctly. But the actual meaning is usually much simpler. Flyway found that migration version 2 does not look the same anymore compared to when it was first applied. This topic helps learners understand what this error means, what a checksum is, why Flyway checks migration consistency, why checksum mismatch happens, how to fix it safely, how to avoid this problem in future. This is a very practical and important Spring Boot plus Flyway concept. What does this error mean? The error, migration checksum mismatch for migration 2, means that Flyway has detected a difference between the migration file that was applied earlier, the migration file that exists now in your project. In simple terms, Flyway remembers the original migration content, and now it sees that the file has changed. Example concept. Migration version 2 ran before means Flyway stored its checksum, means later the file was edited, means Flyway validates again, means checksum no longer matches. That causes validation to fail. What is a checksum? A checksum is a value calculated from the contents of a file. In simple terms, checksum equals a digital fingerprint of the migration file content. If even a small part of the file changes, the checksum usually changes too. For example, if you change SQL statement, column name spacing, in some cases, comments, in some cases, line content, then the checksum may become different. Example concept. Original file content means checksum A. Updated file content means checksum B. Flyway compares A and B means mismatch found. Why Flyway uses checksums? Flyway uses checksums to protect migration history. Database migrations are supposed to be immutable once applied. That means once migration v2_something.sql runs, its content should not be changed later. Why? Because if a migration is changed after being executed in one environment, then different environments may end up with different database structures. Example concept. Dev ran old migration 2 means prod later runs modified migration 2 means databases become inconsistent. Flyway prevents this by storing and validating checksums. Where Flyway stores migration history. Flyway keeps migration records in a table, usually named Flyway Schema History. This table stores details such as migration, version description, script name, execution status, checksum. Example concept. Migration runs means Flyway records version plus checksum in history table. Later, when the app starts again, Flyway checks the current file against the stored record. Why this error happens? This error happens because migration 2 was changed after it had already been applied. That is the most common reason. Example concept. v2 create user table.sql executed yesterday means today someone edits that same file, means Flyway detects mismatch. So, the issue is usually not with Flyway itself. The issue is that the migration file no longer matches the original applied version. Common reasons for checksum mismatch. Here are the most common causes. 1. You edited the migration file after running it. This is the most common cause. Example. Old create table users. ID bigint primary key, name varchar 100. Later changed to new create table users. ID bigint primary key, full name varchar 100. Now, the checksum changes. 2. Someone else changed the migration file in version control. Example concept. Team member updates v2 file means you pull latest code, means your database still has old checksum, means mismatch appears. This is common in team environments. 3. File formatting or content changed. Sometimes even small edits can matter. Added comment, removed comment, changed SQL formatting, changed line endings, changed encoding. Example concept. File looks almost same to human eye, means checksum still changes, means Flyway detects mismatch. 4. Manual database history changes. If someone manually edited Flyway schema history, that can also create validation problems. Example concept. History table altered manually, means Flyway validation no longer matches expected state. 5. Wrong migration file from another branch. In Git workflows, switching branches may bring different versions of the same migration file. Example concept. Branch A has one v2 file, means branch B has edited v2 file, means database history still points to old one. This can produce the mismatch. What Flyway is telling you. Flyway is basically saying, migration version 2 has already been applied before, but the file content is no longer the same. That is why validation fails. Example concept. Applied migration history equals current migration file content. This is a safety feature, not a bug. Is this a good thing? Yes, usually it is. Although the error is inconvenient, it helps protect your database consistency. Without this validation, developers might accidentally modify old migrations and create serious differences between environments. Example concept. Flyway blocks startup now means prevents bigger schema inconsistency later. So the error is actually helpful. Best practice rule. The most important Flyway rule is, do not modify an already applied versioned migration. Instead, leave old migration unchanged. Create a new migration for the next change. Example. v1 initial.sql. v2 create users.sql. v3 add email to users.sql. Example concept. Need schema change after v2 already ran means create v3. Do not edit v2. This is the correct Flyway workflow. Example scenario. Suppose you had this file, v2 create users table, and it originally contained create table users, ID bigint primary key, name varchar 100. Flyway ran it and stored a checksum. Later, you changed it to create table users, ID bigint primary key, name varchar 100, email varchar 150. Now on startup, Flyway compares stored checksum from old version, new checksum from edited file. They differ. So, Flyway throws validate failed, migration checksum mismatch for migration 2, correct way to handle schema changes. If migration 2 has already been applied, and you want to add a new column, do not edit migration 2. Instead, create a new migration like v3 add email to users with content. Alter table users, add column email, varchar 150. Example concept. Old migration stays unchanged, means new migration captures new change, means history remains consistent. This is the right solution in real projects. When is it safe to change old migration files? Usually, only in limited cases, such as local development database can be dropped safely. Migration has not been shared with others. No important environment already depends on it. Example concept. Only your local DB exists, means migration history can be reset safely. But if the migration has already been used in shared environments like QA, staging, or production, editing it is risky and usually wrong. Common fix options. There are several possible fixes depending on your situation. Fix option 1. Revert the migration file back. If the migration file was changed accidentally, the safest fix is often restore the original file content, keep checksum matching, create a new migration for any further changes. Example concept. Wrong edit made to V2 means undo edit means checksum matches again, means create V3 instead. This is usually the best solution. Fix option 2. Drop database and rerun migrations. Local only. If you are only in local development and the data is not important, you can drop the database, recreate it, run migrations again from scratch. Example concept. Local DB reset means Flyway runs migrations fresh, using current files, means no mismatch remains. This is often okay in development, but not in production. Fix option 3. Use Flyway repair carefully. Flyway provides a command called Flyway repair. This updates metadata such as checksums in the history table. In simple terms, repair tells Flyway to accept the current file checksum as the new stored checksum. Example concept. Stored checksum old means repair updates it to match current file. This can remove the error, but it must be used carefully. Why repair can be dangerous. Repair does not magically make environments consistent. It only updates Flyway's recorded metadata. If you changed migration 2 after it was already applied, then using repair may hide a real consistency problem. Example concept. Dev database used old migration logic, means file now contains new logic, means repair updates, checksum only, means history may look clean, but environments may still differ. That is why repair should not be the first automatic answer. When repair is reasonable. Repair may be reasonable when the change is harmless and intentional. All affected environments are understood. You know the actual database state is correct. You are fixing metadata mismatch, not hiding schema inconsistency. Example concept. Checksum mismatch caused by non-meaningful change and all environments are aligned means repair may be acceptable. But you should use it with care. Fix option 4. Clean and rebuild, development only. In some development environments, people use clean database, rerun migrations, rebuild schema from scratch. Example concept. Disposable dev environment means rebuild migration history cleanly. This is fine only when data loss is acceptable. What not to do? Here are important things to avoid. 1. Do not keep editing old versioned migrations after they are applied. This creates repeated checksum problems and inconsistent environments. 2. Do not manually change Flyway schema history unless you fully understand it. This can make things worse. 3. Do not blindly run repair in production. You may hide a real migration inconsistency. 4. Do not ignore the error. Flyway is warning you for a reason. Typical real-world workflow. A good Flyway workflow looks like this. Create migration file. Run migration. Never modify that versioned file again. For next schema change, add a new migration version. Example concept. Each migration file represents one historical step and should remain fixed. That is how Flyway maintains reliable schema history. Difference between development and production handling in local development. You may be able to drop database, clean schema, rerun migrations, repair if appropriate. In production or shared environments, you should usually restore original migration file, create a new migration, avoid destructive reset, avoid careless repair. Example concept. Local environment can be reset easily. Production needs history integrity. Why migration immutability matters. Migration immutability means once executed, a migration file becomes part of history and should not be edited. This matters because databases evolve over time in steps. If history changes later, the sequence becomes unreliable. Example concept. Migration files are like historical records, not temporary scripts. This is one of the most important Flyway ideas. Common beginner mistakes. Here are some common mistakes. Editing an old migration to improve it. This seems convenient, but it breaks migration history. 2. Using one migration file for many repeated changes. Each new schema change should usually get a new version. 3. Running repair without understanding the cause. This may hide the real problem. 4. Assuming checksum mismatch means Flyway is broken. Usually, Flyway is working correctly. 5. Forgetting that teammates or branches may have changed the file. This is very common in collaborative projects. Best practice. The best practice is treat applied Flyway migrations as immutable. Never edit old versioned migration files. Create new migration files for every new schema change. Use repair only when you truly understand the impact. Keep migration history consistent across environments. Example concept. Migration history is a sequence of permanent steps, not editable drafts. This is the safest and most professional approach. Advantages of understanding this error. Advantages include better Flyway troubleshooting, safer database migration practices, fewer environment inconsistencies, cleaner team collaboration, better production reliability. Example concept. Understand checksum mismatch properly means avoid dangerous migration mistakes. Challenges. Some challenges include deciding whether the change is safe, handling team branch conflicts, fixing mismatches without damaging shared environments, knowing when repair is acceptable. Example concept. Checksum mismatch is easy to explain, but safe resolution depends on environment. Concepts learned in this topic. By learning this topic, you understand what a Flyway checksum is, why Flyway validates migration files, what checksum mismatch means, why modifying old migrations causes problems, when to create a new migration instead, when reset or repair may be used, why migration immutability is important. This gives you an important practical Spring Boot plus Flyway skill. Simple definition. Flyway migration checksum mismatch. An error that occurs when the content of an already applied Flyway migration file has changed and no longer matches the checksum stored in Flyway's migration history table. Final summary. The error caused by org.flywaydb.core.api.flyway exception. Validate failed. Migration checksum mismatch for migration 2 means that Flyway applied migration version 2 in the past, stored its checksum, and now sees that the current migration file content is different. The most common cause is that the old migration file was edited after it had already been applied. The safest fix is usually restore the original migration file. Do not modify applied versioned migrations. Create a new migration for further schema changes. In local development, dropping and recreating the database may also be acceptable. Flyway repair can update the stored checksum, but it should be used carefully because it may hide real schema consistency issues. The key idea is applied Flyway migrations should be treated as immutable history. Once you understand this topic, Flyway checksum mismatch errors become much easier to diagnose and fix correctly.